Hello and welcome to why Parsons considers its data protection strategy a business advantage. My name is Henry Axelrod, Partner Solutions Architect for Amazon Web Services, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's presentation. A few logistical things to start off with. When you joined today's webinar, you chose to either join by phone or by computer audio. If for any reason you want to change that selection, just go ahead into the audio selection on the access panel, on the audio pane in your access panel. From the control plane, you also will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing the questions into the question panel. We'll collect the questions and address as many as we can during the Q&A section that will happen at the end of today's presentation. Also at the end of today's event, we're going to have a brief survey. So please make sure to stay connected all the way to the end of the broadcast to submit your feedback. We very much value your feedback and know that your opinion counts to us. Lastly, a recording of the webinar will be made available on YouTube and via an email that you'll receive in approximately 2 to 3 days after the conclusion of the event. So keep an eye out for the follow-up email that will be sent to the address you provided when you registered for today's webinar. With that, I want to again, welcome you to the webinar today. So I'm Henry Axelrod, a partner solution architect, and I am joined today by two other participants. We have Matthew Erickson, who's a cloud solutions architect at Commvault, as well as Benjamin Roper, who's a system engineer at Parsons. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So first, I'm just going to take you through AWS storage. So to start off with, I just want to share a little bit about AWS's global infrastructure. AWS has locations where we have data centers around the world. We group these data centers together in geographical locations that we call regions. This is to provide customers with a highly available network of different locations that they can deploy their infrastructure into. We currently have 24 geographical regions around the world with an ever-expanding list of 3 new regions and 9 availability zones that have been announced. When we think about storage at AWS, we think about really 3 core components that work together in order to provide a complete solution for a customer. The first component is the AWS services, and especially the AWS storage services that provide a scalable and durable, cost-effective place to store customers' data. The second component we think of is our AWS technology partners like Commvault that we'll be talking a little bit later today in this presentation. They take their advanced technology and functionality and tie them in to help enable you to utilize the AWS services. And finally, we have consulting partners that work together with both the technology partner solutions as well as the AWS native services to help customers deploy and manage end-to-end solutions. So just looking at some of those storage services that I mentioned, AWS provides services across file, block, and object, including services like Amazon FSx, Amazon EBS, and a very well-known service that is applicable to today's conversation, which is Amazon Simple Storage Service, or Amazon S3. which and we'll get into more about that shortly. We also offer a wide variety of data transfer services from AWS Direct Connect, which provides a dedicated bandwidth between your data center or co-location facility and the AWS region. Services like AWS Snowball Edge that lets you do an offline transfer of large amounts of data set from your data center to the AWS cloud. So, as I mentioned, when it comes to backup and recovery, Amazon Simple Storage Service provides several different storage classes to help you with any point in your data lifecycle. That goes from your most active data with tiers like standard and intelligent tiering, all the way to data that's archived with our archive level storage classes like Amazon S3 Glacier and Amazon S3 Glacier Deep Archive, which can enable you to store data for as low as $1 per terabyte per month. So when we talk to customers, we hear a lot of different challenges and why customers are looking to just to solve their backup and restore challenges and move those to the cloud or to the AWS cloud. These are some of the common ones that we hear from customers. For one is they have to manually manage the ability to scale up with ever growing amount of storage. On the primary side, there's lots more data to be backed up, and being able to keep up with that with traditional on-premises storage has become a challenge for customers. Also, the high cost of having to build and maintain those storage systems, because as they have to keep on with the capacity, they also have to manage the ever increasing cost of managing that amount of storage, both from a technical and a people resource perspective. And another major thing we hear from customers is compliance reasons, with things like GDPR and needing to include backups in the right to be forgotten. Customers are looking more and more to the AWS cloud to help meet their compliance needs. So, what are some of the benefits that we're seeing with customers when they're moving their backup and restore environments to the cloud? They're getting a fully integrated and secure environment where they can take advantage of the various AWS services, as well as ensure that all their data could be encrypted end to end. It's easy for them to maintain because they don't need to buy any particular hardware or maintain the hardware. On AWS, we provide a variety of services that customers can, click and consume or access via APIs. It's also highly scalable with services, as I mentioned, Amazon S3, that provides virtually unlimited capacity. So there's no need to worry about running out of capacity for your backups. And all this is pay as you go. So things like Amazon S3, you're only paying for the storage that you utilize. So you don't need to worry about making large upfront investments on storage that may sit around underused or have to build out for peak usage. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the key things that customers are looking for, the benefits they're getting, is security and compliance. And with AWS, we work with a number of certification and assurance programs. These are only a small sample of those programs, but as you can see, we work with programs like ISO 2717 and 2718 for cloud privacy and cloud security, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. Customers on the AWS cloud can be PCI compliant or HIPAA compliant. which is certainly important for all our healthcare customers, in current pandemic circumstances. Customers also on the federal side can be compliant with ITAR and FedRAMP, as well as compliance programs, as I mentioned before, like GDPR. So with that, I am going to actually turn it over to Matthew Erickson, Cloud Solution Architect at Commvault.
Okay, thank you, Henry. So welcome everyone. My name's Matthew Erickson. I look after Commvault's AWS customers along with Henry, and I'm incredibly grateful to have Benjamin Roper here today, and he's going to impart his knowledge at actually getting AWS and Commvault working together to deliver to that scale, cost control, and being able to comply as Henry was just indicating, to whatever the particular compliance needs you have wherever your business is operating. But ultimately, what Parsons was looking for when they brought Commvault and AWS together was the confidence that their data was secure and available when they needed it. So what we're going to explore today is going to look at many of the technologies that Henry just mentioned, but ultimately how Parsons leveraged a multi-region approach to add business resilience to their broader IT landscape. So we're going to be looking at protecting EC2 workloads, snapshotting EBS volumes, but ultimately that has resulted in Parsons managing over 14 petabytes of backup data in the cloud that they have distributed amongst a number of those S3 storage services that Henry mentioned, from S3 Standard all the way down to the archival Glacier service. But most importantly, you're going to get firsthand knowledge of how they migrated efficiently, securely, and considering cost at all points. So Ben, did I miss anything there?
No, that's a good summary, thanks. No, the only thing that comes to mind is Commvault's command center. It's how it keeps me informed with centralized reports, having the dashboard, proactive alerts, basically staying in control with basically the multi-region distributed data centers.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess before we get started, I should let you know a little bit about Ben and what he does. Ben is our super guru today. He has actually done this at scale. And if you want to see him in living color, you can hit Commvault's YouTube channel and you'll see him talking about his experience. But today you're going to get the detailed specialist view of that. So absolutely stick around. Ben has his history in system and storage administration, starting in endpoint protection. I think these days we often refer to them as ransomware magnets, looking after servers, storage, tape libraries, which has ultimately prepared him for now architecting and managing his multi-region Commvault data management platform. So he's spread across 20 odd on-prem locations and multiple AWS regions today. And so Ben, before we get into the detail, I mean, how would you describe the experience now that you've been using Commvault and AWS together for quite some time?
I guess a good way to explain it would be simple, would be the right word to say. It's lots of work, the amount of the console-driven work from the setup, the monitoring, responding to alerts and stuff. It just makes everything simple. I didn't need to be an expert with all the AWS multi-offerings and stuff. The Commvault just made it work. And
yeah, absolutely. And obviously we're all being asked to pick up new technologies all the time these days. So anything you can do to make that easier on you is quite important. So, I mean, looking at Parsons, I see they're a civil engineering company. You've got 18,000 something employees in 26 countries, and as I understand it, you're doing project management, engineering, construction, but your business was looking at the threats in the IT landscape these days, and they wanted to adapt new technologies that could modernize and secure their business, and they basically selected a cloud-first approach. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we wanted to take a more secure approach to our distributed applications and basically lessen our footprint. And so we chose AWS for its security compliance and its regional availability.
Okay, so you mentioned compliance there, and I see government and defence on the list here. I'm sure that was quite challenging to get across internal IT teams. How did you convince them that AWS was the right choice to making sure their data was going to be secure and available?
Our business leaders understood that the global presence of the AWS regions and that offered a greater resilience for our business. And so the AWS compliance programs gave our security teams the confidence that we could remain secure in the cloud. And it's kind of a shared responsibility, of course.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to explore that today. I see that you have applied some very interesting best practices in your environment to stay secure. So that's really good to see. So look, I'll let everyone know, a little bit about Commvault before we get started. Commvault and AWS have a strong partnership. We've been working together for many years, and we have validated solutions for protection and disaster recovery and long-term archival retention. Ultimately, customers come to us quite often to exit tape and having to handle all of that tape media, but that quickly becomes a protection and a migration of some or even all of their IT landscape into AWS. So we have 11 exabytes of data under management today with almost 700 petabytes in cloud as well. And we're really recognized as an industry leader in being able to manage your data, not only to recover, but also to comply with things like GDPR and so on that Henry was mentioning. So effectively, if you are storing data for the purposes of your primary application and recovery of that application, Commvault can help you take that data into the cloud in an optimized, secure way, storing it for cost and effectively its data value within one or many of the Amazon S3 services. And we can even get you there using things like the Snowball devices. So if you want to get into cloud in an offline fashion, you have a large amount of data that you don't want to move across the wire, we can do that too. All of that feeds into being able to then provision and migrate your IT landscape into the compute and DR services that Amazon provide, whether that be infrastructure services like EC2 instances, Elastic File, or relational database services. This is all at the same time applying the rich security controls that Amazon brings to the table that allow you to remain confident that your data is encrypted, in flight, at rest, and so on. So, but enough about us. You didn't come here to hear from me. We're here to hear from Ben and what he achieved as he migrated to AWS and cloud. So let's take a look at the problems that, when I first discussed this with Ben, he effectively said his boss walked into the cube on a Friday afternoon with 3 simple problems. the business was concerned about coordinated cyber attacks. They were seeing these occur within the media. There were some very high-profile events that occurred, and they wanted to effectively make sure that their business was protected from those new threats. No one wants to be on the front page of the news. They also had some concern about regional disaster events. With the distribution of Parsons' business and the fact that they are a distributed workforce, quite often out on customer sites, they needed to make sure that the IT services that they were providing were resilient against the sort of regional events that could occur for some of their offices, like flooding and snowstorms and so on. And then finally, with cloud already identified, they then had a new concern. You know, can we actually get to cloud and provide our services in AWS in a secure manner? So give us the confidence that you can do that. Did I capture all of that, Ben? What can you tell us?
Yeah, no, it was correct. You know, I know you're joking there, but it probably was actually on Friday. But our customer base, being partially government and defense, means we take a proactive approach to securing our data, digital assets. And so the public exposure risk and sensitive data leaks was a key concern for management. And so we have an internal security and risk management team that we need to get approval from to perform any large-scale IT initiative that impacts customer data. And additionally, we have a number of our data centers disconnected from, you know, there's times where we've had times where our data centers have been disconnected from our global network due to localized events. And we have resilience built into our infrastructure, but network outages often meant sites were offline and remote offices, workers. It impacts the project delivery to clients.
Okay, so you did mention, I guess, some site outages there, which are always part and parcel of running services in, you know, an owned or operated facility. I see that you're not quite just a primary data center, DR data center. 26 sites worldwide. Can you tell us a little bit about your IT landscape when you started migrating to AWS?
Sure. We have it's roughly 26 sites with using the Commvault infrastructure, but with our 18,000 plus employees, they don't sit in these offices. They're all over. We provide construction engineering services. So our employees they're at build sites, different remote offices, or home even now with the COVID-19 stuff going on, a lot of remote workers, and so they require the 24/7, 365 availability to our IT services. And if they need engineering spec urgently, or they need to be able to access the different offices, and that's responsible for that project. We need to make it available. And so the data that we have, it's mostly like file server data, SQL data, a few Oracle databases, lots of VMware, Hyper-V, virtual machines. And our mandate was to migrate this to the cloud securely.
Okay. Simple problem, right? So let's have a look at what you did here, and we're everyone, you know, we've got a lot on the screen here. What we're going to step through is how Ben actually made this happen in a controlled fashion, right? So effectively, bunch of data centers with databases, servers, VMs. You were backing up to disk and tape, correct?
Correct. Yeah, with lots of physical servers with direct attached storage that we're using for backups. Some of these servers had direct attached tape, and so my job was trying to keep all the backups green while continuing requesting more storage for growth as we would grow. And I was always getting pushback of like, complaints about needing more backup storage. And I always thought, well, I guess we could just stop backing up our data and stuff. And so,
Yes. Yes, it is. It is data. It only goes up and to the right. It just grows and grows and grows. So I can see step one. It looks like you initially got the data out there in an encrypted and optimized fashion out to the S3 service. So effectively, you told Commvault to copy all of that disk and tape data to AWS. Was that the process?
correct. We replicated the data using Commvault's deduplication, and compression, and encrypted the data, and this sped up the transfers hugely. And we stored all our data in S3. Being deduplicated, it further saves on ongoing storage cost. And so I didn't have to. This result was I didn't have to go to the data center, swap out tapes, worry about repair, replacing hard drives, tapes failures, hardware failing, different things, transporting, storing, and so.
Okay, so I guess things got a little easier for you. You had less infrastructure on site to manage, less moving parts. Obviously, that affected your maintenance bills because you were getting rid of infrastructure that it was now serviced by S3. But I see so many S3 icons on the slide here. So can you explain a little to our audience why there are so many copies of your data here and why you're doing that?
We back up our data or stored in different availability zones, and so we wanted to make it. It's for resiliency. There's different policies. Different data goes into certain S3 storage, and so it's not all eggs into one basket type thing.
Yep. Okay. And I guess the other thing there is if we look at each of these storage services, each one of them has a different performance characteristic, as in how quickly you can get the data back, but also what you're paying to store and retrieve that data. So your data is effectively tiering through the S3 service to make sure that it's stored in the most cost-effective manner based on the value of that data to the business.
Correct. We go to the S3 standard. We usually write our primary backup copies there for 30 days, and then we migrate that data over to infrequent access for like a 90-day retention for the primary copies. And then we do additional copies of the data into other buckets for the long-term retention and to have secondary copies of the data.
Okay, so I actually see this copy over here on the right says air-gapped backups. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what are you trying to protect against with respect to an air gap? I guess for our listeners, an air gap in the past was taking the tapes out of the library and sending them off-site to another party. What are you doing there, Ben?
So our air gap, what we're doing for that is we just wanted absolute confidence that like any bad actor couldn't go and delete those files, and so with Commvault we set up a thing where we prevent anybody, even Commvault, from deleting the data into from certain buckets, and so essentially that gives us that whole. It's only a write-only area, read and write, and so it gives us that confidence that it creates that air gap.
Okay, that's great, and I love to see unique applications of the two technologies there to make sure that you can achieve the security posture that your business is looking for. That's great. So that was step two. You've now got all of your data stored in a cost-effective manner and in different availability zones or regions to protect you from a regional outage. I see there was a step three here, which was migrating data into what looks like your actual running workloads. Can you tell us a little bit about how that backup data helped you provision effectively a AWS-based IT landscape rather than maintaining those applications on-prem?
Correct. Yeah. No, we're moving the Commvault infrastructure into AWS, but at the same time, our business is migrating and moving to AWS and building new EC2 instances and different like RDS instances. And so I used Commvault's ability to convert VMs to EC2 instances for a lift and shift for some of the infrastructure, and majority, and then I moved mission critical systems. We're moving those, and we're also for some of our sites and stuff, we use Commvault's continuous data replication offer to be able to offer that that replication to where for critical sites to keep them online and always available for anything that's unanticipated that may happen.
Okay, so you're actually running a truly hybrid data center here. So you have some applications that have remained on-prem for now, and the remainder have moved into AWS. Are you predominantly, is most of your workload in AWS today?
Yes, most of our stuff is in AWS. It's continually moving, and yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And for our listeners, what Ben was talking about there is if you have, let's say, virtual machines or databases on-prem today, and you want to move those into, let's say, EC2 infrastructure or even RDS instances, Commvault can utilize your backups to perform the provisioning of that new infrastructure within AWS. So you don't need to rebuild your applications. Your data is actually already in cloud because you've moved your tape over there. It's as simple as a recovery within Commvault to bring that infrastructure up within Amazon. So okay, so it's I guess you've got your feet up on the desk now, right? Because you're in complete control. Can you tell us a little bit about what are your high level takeaways that people who are on the call today can take away and apply to their environment and migration?
I guess first things is get your resilience from the AWS region. It's larger, more diverse than most enterprise data centers today. You can get there faster by using deduplication, reduce costs once you get there by using the S3 storage class.
Okay, so I actually forgot to ask, how many regions are you in?
We're currently using four regions right now, and we're continually moving to more. And it's basically keep the data close to the customer and keep DR copies away from the customer.
Okay, and I assume you're using a mixture of the S3 storage services depending on whether that data is being used real time or whether it's being used as a just in case DR copy. I guess what's next for that data?
Security, keeping security in mind. We use IAM roles, using multi-factor authentication, the different tokens when authenticating to AWS. And after that, you can, I guess, basically sit back and manage your backups by your business SLA.
Okay. And so it's good that you mentioned SLAs, because I can see your numbers up here on the top left of the screen, something like 8,000 backups, and I know this was actually midweek, and only 34 issues for you to look at. How do you actually stay in control when you've got so many regions and so many I guess pieces of infrastructure that you need to look after and ensure are meeting that business SLA for recovery readiness?
Yeah, simple. It's using the Commvault's command center. It gives me the SLA when you log in, but I also have alerts configured to alert me of anything going on. Using the Commvault reporting features is very helpful.
Okay. Yep.
Makes
Yeah,
it
I
really
know.
simple.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key, right? Being alerted when something needs your attention, rather than, I guess, what we used to do in back in the days of yore, when we used to log into a dashboard every day and run through checklists to ensure everything was operating as expected. So for those that have not seen the Commvault Command Center, that is your one single pane of glass user interface for all of your data, regardless of whether it's on-prem or in cloud. And it's going to allow you to not only perform those backups and recoveries, but also that management to compliance and even conversion and migration to get you where you need to be from on-prem to cloud by doing those conversions for you. So okay, you're in control with respect to your SLAs. Where are you going next? What's the next challenge that's been put on your plate?
We have a number of Commvault instances still to migrate into AWS. Different legacy from multiple acquisitions, different locations, and as I'm working to kind of consolidate more of our Commvault environments and using the CommServe DR feature to be able to for our DR sites.
Okay, so this is providing a highly available application architecture for Commvault that's really relying on that great infrastructure that AWS are providing, that's just available to you. You can now stand up, so you're creating a secondary copy of Commvault that's sitting there and ready to take over in the event of a loss of an availability zone or even an operator error with the primary system.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And so obviously I tend to hear when I speak to customers, and certainly when I was managing infrastructure as well, there were two primary problems that I had, apart from just keeping things green, which was reducing cost and increasing performance, which is always a challenge because the two compete with one another. Can you tell us what you're planning on doing there to stay to optimize for both of those requirements?
We're looking into using the Commvault's storage accelerator to speed up the backups to Amazon, and that would ultimately kind of shrink our media agent size, and which would save on cost and speed up the time it takes to move the backups to AWS. Also power management to reduce the media agent runtime that's needed. And then we also have a lot of local infrastructure that does need to remain on site due to security constraints or other constraints. And so investigating the AWS outposts is something that we're looking into.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think yeah, Outposts is definitely very interesting. From the moment that AWS announced that you could effectively have your own little slice of AWS running in your data center, I was very interested, as are many of our customers that do have those requirements for data that cannot leave their facility. So that is certainly a interesting way to comply to some of those data sovereignty controls that businesses are under, and that's as simple as just managing a policy within Commvault to state that data cannot leave that site. So I guess a bit of background for our listeners that are not aware of the Storage Accelerator or Power Management. Storage Accelerator is the ability for your applications or the systems that you're protecting to send their data directly into S3. And what this does is it reduces obviously the time to take those backups, but most importantly, you run less infrastructure within AWS to facilitate that protection, which is again about simplifying your day with less moving parts for you to manage, and saving cost because you're running less infrastructure to keep your environment protected. But for the infrastructure that you are running, like your media agents, which are Commvault's data movers, the machines that are responsible for taking data and storing it for later recovery, those systems can be power managed with Commvault. And this means when we are not using those systems to perform protection or recovery operations, that they will be automatically powered down by Commvault. So if you're running your backup activities for 6 hours a night, you're going to get back the rest of the day in utility cost. So a great way to reduce the costs of protecting a large distributed landscape. So we really want you to embrace the utility nature of AWS, but also remain protected. So I certainly do this in my own lab environments. So whenever I need to do something, or I'm demonstrating a capability to a customer, the moment I go and run that restore or backup within the command center, Commvault just magically steps in behind that and powers up that system in order to allow the operation to occur. And then when I step away from the keyboard, Commvault automatically shuts that infrastructure down again. And it certainly made a big difference to my monthly AWS bill. So my boss is very happy. So okay, that was fantastic, Ben. And we have a lot of great input there for our listeners to go and start accelerating their migration to the cloud, but while staying secure and in control of those costs that we all want to be aware of as we start embracing more utility computing. I think what we'll do now is we'll pass back to Henry so that we can kick off a Q&A and you can hit me with all your hard questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt and Ben. That was a great story, and it's great to hear how you were able to accomplish all that, Ben. So at this point, we're going to switch into our question and answer section. I just want to remind everyone that you have your question section on the control panel where you can submit any questions that you may have for today's presenters, and we'll be able to get those answered for you. So to start off with, looks like we have a question, and this is probably for Ben, but Matt, you can also feel free to jump in. Is what did you see as one of the biggest benefits that you got from moving from on-premises to AWS for your backup data?
This has been, I think one of the benefits that comes to my mind is the flexibility, not being constrained with the hardware requirements and the whole infrastructure, being able to be flexible. Going to AWS has been really nice. With as large and complex as our environment is, it's been nice to be flexible.
Great.
Oh,
Thanks,
is that a
Van.
good answer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, flexibility is always an important thing, and the cloud definitely gives you, with the agility, scalability, gives you a lot of
Right.
flexibility versus what you might be able to do on-prem. So, absolutely. I see a question here. How easy is it to test Commvault if someone's new to Commvault or AWS?
Okay, I can jump in.
You want to grab that one, Matt? And maybe I can
Yeah,
add to it
sure.
as well.
Yeah, so if you're interested in getting running with Commvault, you can head off to commvault.com/trials, and you can effectively get a trial edition. But Commvault is in the marketplace, the AWS marketplace now. So if you go and search for Commvault in the marketplace, you can choose the CommServe, which is our all-in-one server, and you'll get a 60-day trial license when you stand that up, and you can start playing with the technology immediately. When you sign up for a trial, you'll get like an install guide and everything for Commvault to help you through that. And yeah, feel free to start playing around with it. Try before you buy is always the best way.
Great. I see a couple of questions here about storage classes. Just to kind of summarize them together. So, can you talk a little bit about if what storage classes that Commvault supports, if customer can take advantage of all the different storage classes of Amazon S3?
Yeah, so Commvault supports all of the S3 storage classes today, including Glacier and Deep Archive. Also the intelligent tiering services as well. Commvault does recommend when you are utilizing a cold or archival tier and our deduplication technology that you use what Commvault calls a combined storage tier, which is available to you within Commvault. And what that does is it intelligently places the data that you're going to need to perform that initial recovery, as in, what backups do I have, where are they stored, in a warmer tier, and then packing the archival or cool data into one of those Glacier or Deep archive stores. So short answer is all of them, but there are some best practices when utilizing the archive tiers.
Great. That's good to hear. Yeah, it's customers, and I hear this from customers often as well. Where they want to be able to take advantage of, the different storage services and features that AWS offers, and Commvault has always been an early adopter of those features, giving customers like access to the different storage tiers and other features available on Amazon S3. So I think that's great for customers. Okay, let's see what other questions we have on here. Okay. So let's see. So you were just talking about the storage tiers. There's a question here about um, someone is asking how did you move your data from S3 to S3IA? And did you do this with did Commvault do this, or was it through AWS?
No, yeah, I'll take this. We used we use AWS's lifecycle policy to migrate the data from S3 to standard to infrequent access. And as AWS migrates it over for us, Commvault still can see the data in both tiers, and so we're able to still restore the data and still use it. It just moves it to the cheaper tier. And the reason we do that is a lot of times we'll restore requests happen more frequently within a 30-day window. But then past that, we still want to keep our primary backup copy for at least 90 days. So we use AWS's lifecycle policy to migrate it over to the infrequent access to help save on costs, and we keep it there for the 90 days before it ages off. So,
Okay. So you're using a
did I explain
mixture
that
of
well?
AWS. Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt. You can expound on that.
No. I guess you're using, I guess, a little bit of a hybrid approach. You're letting lifecycle policies migrate content where it doesn't affect Commvault, whereas Commvault stays aware of it and can still access it. But when you are moving to another tier where you're looking to effectively create a new storage location, then you're migrating that with Commvault. So yeah.
Yep.
I think the only other thing that I hear from customers a lot is, do you support the worm offerings from AWS, things like S3 Object Lock and Vault Lock, for the purposes of predominantly like your air gapping or ransomware protection. So knowing that objects going into S3 are going to be locked and cannot be modified, just in case something happens in the business, they want to know that there is an air gap copy. And Commvault does support S3 Object Lock and Vault Lock today. So certainly come and have a chat to us if you're looking to leverage those technologies, and we can help you out.
Great. So I see another question here. Can the intelligent storage feature be configured to store file server data throughout the hot, cold tiers based on the last access modified creation date? So I think that one's referring to the intelligent tiering storage class of Amazon S3. So I think I'll grab that question myself. So for that feature, the intelligent tiering does move between hot and cold tiers. It's functionally the equivalent of S3 standard and S3IA, and it does it based on access patterns. So it learns the access patterns over a 30-day period and will then move to cold storage anything that's not been accessed or has a lower access pattern, and it, if necessary, it can actually move things back to the hot tier when they are accessed. So yes, it's very much based on access. It's not based on modified or created date. We do, though, have AWS lifecycle policies that can be configured based on creation date to move to a tier based on a certain date. So that would be, so if you wanted to go based on creation date, you would use the lifecycle policies. If you want to go based on access, that would be where the intelligent tiering would come in. Okay. So one question here is they want to know about optimizing for throughput and performance. Uh, do you want to maybe, I don't know, Ben, if you want to talk about a little bit about anything you might have done in terms of performance, or Matt, if you just want to talk about it generally and some best practices for optimizing the solution.
Little, I'll talk a little bit and I'll let Matt go on. For performance and stuff, there was a slight, moving the data to the cloud. It wasn't that big of a performance issue at all that we noticed and stuff. It was still, a lot of it was seamless and it was really fast. We didn't notice too much of a difference at all, and we were still able to meet our backup windows sufficiently.
Okay. So I guess I'll add a little bit more color to that. I'm assuming this is most likely talking about backup of workloads within AWS. Obviously, if those workloads are remote, quite often it's just the latency, speed of light, how big your network link is into AWS. But once you are inside AWS and you are moving data around, fundamentally, it comes down to the media agent and complying with Commvault's best practice sizing recommendations. Those sizing recommendations have been validated in our labs to provide optimal network throughput for the backup. Additionally, the backup process leverages EBS snapshots and spins up a copy of those on IO1 volumes to speed up the read time from the volume out to storing that in S3. So there are a number of enhancements already occurring underneath the covers there. The best thing to do is to ensure that you are using the recommended sizing and IO optimized backups are turned on by default.
If I can add like another real story experience I'm going through right now. We're migrating a server to Amazon Cloud, and we're using Commvault to. There's several terabytes of data that we're just going to copy from the on-prem server. Need to move it to the AWS Cloud server, the EC2 instance. And at first, they were trying to just do a straight up copy or use different tools and stuff, and it was just taking forever, and they were getting a lot of failures, and it wasn't working. And so they approached me and said, "Hey, can we do this with Commvault?" And sure, and Commvault's able to move the data a lot faster, a lot quicker. And we've had some network hiccups here and there at times, and Commvault's able to recover and keep going again, and pick it right up. And find it's been really seamless to be able to move the data to AWS that way.
Great, thanks guys. With that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. A few next steps for you guys here about where you can learn more about AWS storage, Commvault, and AWS, as well as see the full Parsons story. And I always recommend people to who don't currently have AWS accounts, you can go ahead to aws.amazon.com/free and sign up for a free tier account where you get access to certain services on AWS for free for the first 12 months. Well, thank you all for attending today's webinar, and please remember to stay connected to complete a brief survey at the conclusion of the webinar. We look forward to supporting you in your current and future projects. Thanks again, and have a great day.